one of the paradigms that we're not seeing very many people talk about the current conflict in the United States is, in a lot of ways, it is rural and urban not understanding one another, right? Like, you look at the way that the rural world, and I'm talking about people living in towns of 10,000 people or less, which is a third of the population. People forget that 33% of the population lives in towns 10,000 or less, and the people living in the cities, they almost come from different countries. Like, the way that they view how things should be, how they ought to be, where they're going, what is good, they're different. What's your view on this, since you see both sides of the spectrum?
I feel like I kind of understand both sides too. I mean, the road trip that I went on right after college, I would say I legitimately experienced culture shock in my own country regularly. And that was, if I had to write a list of expectations for my trip before I left, that's not something I would have even crossed my mind to have experienced.
You wouldn't even think to write it down, right? You wouldn't even think like, oh, this is going to be something that would happen, right?
I always tell the story. I remember showing up on a farm, I believe it was in North Carolina, and this man that I only knew from the internet was like, I'm fixing to carry you over there, but something fixing to carry. I'm like, what's broken? And like, my legs work fine, I can walk there. Like, that really, like, I just had to use context, and just I don't think I even said anything. I just
did you let him carry you across the river?
No, nothing was broken. We just walked around his farm. But yeah, he and we got in the truck and like drove around. But like, that's what fixing to carry meant. But I didn't know when I
didn't know what that meant. Yeah, I was imagining you being picked up and carried across the stream or something.
Yeah. Like, a lot of times in the South, they'll say like, oh, I'll carry you over to Walmart, rather than like, come along with me or ride with me. It's like, I'll carry you to Walmart, or I carried you to school today. So that sort of thing. But you were asking about the urban rural divide. And I feel like that's something we talked a lot about in college, and I feel like it's painted more black and white than maybe it is. I mean, I even think of myself as like, would I fit in the rural camp or the urban camp? Like, I grew up in a community of about 2,000 people. My parents didn't farm, but my neighbors were like corn, sheep, cattle, and a cemetery. So like, that's closest to growing up on a farm as you can in town. Many of the people I interacted with were farmers, or like the more traditional picture of an ag producer. We had crappy internet and all the great things that people associate with rural America. Now I live in Des Moines, the biggest, like you said, the biggest city in Iowa. But I feel like, I don't know. I guess I'm just processing out loud here. But
there's a fascinating book called Coming Apart by a guy named Charles Murray, who's out of the AEI, the American Enterprise Institute. And the first 2 chapters of that book, Coming Apart, just ripped my mind in shreds. Are you familiar with this book? Do you know what this is about? So he's talking about how much the GI Bill, in effect, changed the demographics of the United States, such that you started having people clustering in cities and then marrying only people that also went to college. So you started having college people marrying college people. And then you started separating those people just by fact of, if you have a hedge fund manager and a doctor that are now highly educated and can make a lot of money, they continue to concentrate their wealth and their social structures and everything. They just keep moving into a more centralized location. But most people don't realize that a third of the US population is living in towns of 10,000 people or less. But even more than that, most of the people in the upper 50% have never been on a factory floor. They've never actually been to a farm. They've never petted a farm animal. Like, the experience that we have is mitigated through probably the English language and mainstream television, of which mainstream television is going off. So like, our cultural influences that bind us together seem to be fracturing out quite a bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that in some ways. Maybe I'm just like a weird, creepy people person. I'm realizing this as I'm like talking out loud. But after I got done with the road trip, I liked to, it seems like impersonal to call it a game, but I like to kind of play this game with like anybody that I was interacting with, like whether it be like the bartender, my cashier at Walmart, my Uber drivers were my favorite, or like people, the person at the desk when you're like checking into your hotel, people that you normally are like, I'm here for this, like your role is to serve me.
Yeah, you're interrupting me getting things done. Yeah,
or like, you know, their job is to get you on your way. But I love trying to see how much I can get that person to tell them about me. And like, you would be I was always surprised, like there could be an Uber driver in DC, and in a 5-block drive, we could always find something we had in common. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just a weird game, but it was a really powerful experience, that you know, you jump in this car with somebody who looks totally different than you, speaks different than you, is a totally different age than you, obviously lives in a bustling city, and I'm like, you know, it's a lot for me to cross 4 lanes and I can't even see across this road. And you're like, I don't have anything in common with this person, but you start talking to them and asking questions and sincerely listening for their answers, rather than like something to respond to or like one up. I feel like so many people, when they're listening, it was a really powerful, I'm going off on a rabbit trail here, but it was a really powerful experience to do like 100 farm interviews, and then I had to hand transcribe them all on this road trip that I went on. And so I got to spend a lot of time with myself, and a lot of it was really cringeworthy. And I was like, wow, like, am I really listening to this guy's life story that I just like drove across the country to ask him for? Or am I like, in the moment, I was like, oh yeah, man, I'm on the same page. Like I experienced something like that. I can relate. But really, I was just sitting there and one-upping everything he was telling me.
Oh, that is so hard to watch or listen
right?
to. Oh my God, you just want to put your head down on the table and be like, what do you think he was thinking when I said that?
Yeah, like, who is this know-it-all 20-something?
I doubt that happened.
But jelly bean car, like, to tell me that she's bottle fed lambs too, and she used to bale hay, and you know, she likes green tractors, and they're like, what does she need to talk to me for? You know, and I feel like when you have the opportunity to spend that much time with yourself and hear how you interact with people, I think that, coupled with my like fly on the wall experience at like Target or all these like weird side jobs I have, I don't know, I think
there's something about the recording in the candid moments that makes you like be like, ooh, I didn't realize that. Like my wife has come down here and I've been busy working on something and she'll have brought me dinner, and you know, the engagement will go fine, but she'll leave and I'll play it back and I'll be like, I really didn't even look up there. I didn't give her the normal acknowledgments that if she wasn't giving me, I'd be really hurt. But we don't have very many experiences where you observe it. But when you do, you're like, I don't know that I would like that guy if I knew him.
Right. Okay, this is really weird, but after like, a year of my life was basically recorded on this road trip. Like anytime I was with someone, my recorder was rolling. Do you ever, now you're like, I really was embarrassed at myself when I was like, oh, let me play back with the recording because I didn't hear what they said. And like normal engagement, like I'm at Target, I'm like, oh, I didn't hear what that person asked me. Like, let me listen back on the recording. I'm like, I don't have a recording. Like, I need to be a better listener. That in some ways, like recording everything, I just like didn't ask questions that I was like, oh, I'll catch that. Like I'll understand when I slow it down on the recording. Or